My name is Maud Adams. I was born into what seemed like a normal middle-class family in a quiet neighborhood. My parents, Mark and Laura Adams, were obsessed with early learning and child development. Our house was full of parenting books, and my mom was always talking about new ideas she had read. Laura, don't you think we're overdoing it a bit? I remember my dad asking one evening as my mom tried to teach me basic math. I was barely 4 years old.
No, Mark.
These are important years for development, Mom insisted, showing him another colorful flashcard. The books say we need to start early. Looking back, I laugh because, despite all their effort, I grew up just like any other kid. I sat up, walked, and talked right on time. Nothing extraordinary. But instead of accepting that kids develop at their own speed, my parents saw me as their first, failed experiment. Everything changed when my sister Sabrina was born. I was 4 years old then, and our house turned into a baby genius training center. Mom had taken special courses by then, determined to do things differently with Sabrina. The difference was clear. While I had regular toys, Sabrina had learning tools. While I had picture books, she had advanced materials to boost her thinking skills. Every little milestone she reached was celebrated. She said her first words early, walked sooner than most kids, and could solve puzzles meant for older children. My grandparents, Luke and Jenna Adams, lived nearby, and their house became my safe place. They treated Sabrina and me equally, always showing us the same love. I remember sitting on Grandma Jenna's lap when I was 5 as she read stories to both of us. Both of my granddaughters are perfect just the way they are, Grandma would say, giving us cookies. This always annoyed my mom, who would mutter about recognizing exceptional talent. Laura, Grandma once said firmly at a family dinner, children need love, not pressure. They're not experiments. Mom, you don't understand modern parenting, my dad replied, defending my mom. Sabrina shows real promise.
We need to nurture that, Mom added.
I sat there quietly, pushing peas around my plate, already understanding how my parents saw me. I was just the practice run, the rough draft, before my parents created their masterpiece. Elementary school was pretty normal for me. I wasn't the best student, but I wasn't the worst either. I made friends, did my homework, and enjoyed being a regular kid. My report cards were mostly BS with an occasional A, which I thought was fine. My parents, though, barely noticed them. Then Sabrina started school. Unlike me, who went to the local public school, she got special treatment. We've enrolled Sabrina in the Wellington Academy for Gifted Children, Mom announced proudly at dinner one night. They don't usually take kids so young, but they were impressed with her test scores. I almost choked on my milk. Wellington Academy was that fancy private school with a huge campus and an Olympic-sized pool. It cost more to go there than to buy a car. The spending didn't stop at tuition. Every time Sabrina complained about her schoolwork or threw a tantrum, our parents would solve it by buying her something. I don't want to do math today, Sabrina would whine. It's too hard. Tell you what, sweetie, Mom would say. If you finish your homework, we'll go to the toy store and get that new dollhouse you wanted. Sabrina quickly learned how to play this game. Soon, every little thing she did came with a reward. If I get an A on this test, can I have a new iPad? I'll do extra credit if you buy me those designer shoes. Meanwhile, I sat alone at the kitchen table, quietly doing my homework. No rewards, no special attention. Once, I got the highest score in my class on a science project. I built a solar system model and worked on it for weeks. When I showed it to Mom, she just nodded and said, "That's nice, honey." Oh, did you hear? Sabrina got into the advanced mathematics program. The final straw came when I was 14. I had just finished decorating my bedroom, the bigger of the 3 kids' rooms, with posters of my favorite bands and photos of me with my friends. It wasn't fancy, but it was my space, my sanctuary. One evening, Sabrina stomped into the living room where our parents were watching TV. "I want Maud's room," she demanded, hands on her hips. "Mine is too small for all my stuff, and I need more space for my study area." I looked up from my book, sure my parents would shut down this ridiculous request. But instead, Mom and Dad exchanged glances. "You know, that makes sense," Dad said. "Sabrina does have more equipment and educational materials.
What?
No, I protested. That's my room. I've had it since I was little. But they didn't listen. The very next day, while I was at school, they moved all my things into Sabrina's smaller room. When I got home, I found Sabrina already settled in my old room, her expensive desk sitting where my bed used to be. This is so unfair, I shouted, tears streaming down my face. Life isn't fair, Maud, Mom said, brushing me off. Your sister needs the space, more than you do. Don't be selfish. I slammed the door to my new, smaller room and threw myself onto the bed, which barely fit in the tiny space. That night, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, I realized something. In this house, I would always come second. When high school graduation was coming up, I spent months researching colleges, writing applications, and dreaming about my future. My grades were decent, and I had good extracurriculars. I wasn't aiming for Harvard or Yale, but I had my heart set on solid state universities with strong business programs. Then came that family dinner. Grandma and Grandpa were over for Mom's Thursday roast, and we were all sitting around the table. Sabrina was bragging about her latest academic achievement, and Mom and Dad were glowing with pride. So, Maud, Grandma Eleanor said with a warm smile, tell us about your college plans. Where are you thinking of applying? I sat up straighter, excited to finally talk about my future. Well, I've been looking at State University's business program. They have. Oh, about that, Mom interrupted, putting down her fork with a loud clink. Your father and I need to talk to you about college. She paused dramatically. We won't be able to help with your tuition. We need to save all our resources for Sabrina's education. She has a real chance at getting into the Ivy League, and that's going to be expensive. I stared at her in shock. You can't be serious. Grandpa Luke said, his fork dropping onto his plate. What about Maud's future? Mom sighed like she was explaining something simple to a child. Look, she began. We have to be realistic here, Mom said, her tone cold. Sabrina is gifted. She has real potential. Maud is, well, Maud is ordinary. She can get a job right out of high school, or maybe take some community college classes, if she saves up. How dare you? Grandma's voice trembled with anger. How can you dismiss your own daughter like this? Oh, please, Dad said sharply, his face tightening. Let's not pretend. Maud's never shown any exceptional abilities. Higher education would be wasted on her. We're just being practical. I couldn't take it anymore. It felt like the walls were closing in on me. I pushed my chair back and ran from the table, tears streaming down my face. Behind me, I could still hear the argument, my parents' so-called logic clashing with my grandparents' outrage. About 20 minutes later, there was a soft knock on my door. Maud, sweetheart, can I come in? It was Grandma Eleanor. I didn't answer, but she came in anyway. She sat on the edge of my bed and gently rubbed circles on my back, just like she used to when I was little. Your grandfather and I have made a decision, she said softly. We're going to pay for your college education. All of it. I turned to her, wiping my eyes.
What?
But that's too much money. Nonsense, she said with a kind smile, brushing the hair from my tear-streaked face. You deserve an education just as much as anyone else. More, actually, because you've worked hard for it without any support. For the first time that evening, I smiled. In that moment, something changed inside me. I realized I didn't need my parents' approval anymore. I had people who believed in me, and for the first time, I was starting to believe in myself. College life was a fresh start. Away from my parents' constant comparisons and criticism, I thrived. The business program felt like the perfect fit. My professors praised my analytical thinking, and I discovered a talent for understanding market trends and investment strategies. Every weekend, I called Grandma and Grandpa to share updates about school. I hadn't spoken to my parents since leaving for college, and they hadn't reached out either. Honestly, that made things easier. The only news I heard about them came from my grandparents. One evening, during one of our calls, Grandma sounded worried. You won't believe what's happening with Sabrina, she said, her voice heavy. You know she got into graduate by Hilton Princeton, and your parents wouldn't stop bragging about it. But once she got there, away from your parents constantly hovering, She completely stopped caring about school. I listened as Grandma told me about Sabrina's dramatic fall from grace. My perfect sister had discovered parties, boys, and the freedom to do whatever she wanted. Her carefully crafted image as the family genius fell apart in just a few weeks. "Your mother called me in tears yesterday," Grandma said. "The dean's office sent them a warning letter. Sabrina is barely going to class, and when she does, she's either late or hungover." "What are Mom and Dad doing about it?" I asked. "Oh, they're desperate," Grandma replied. "They've tried everything, threatening to cut her allowance, promising her a new car if she improves her grades, even flying out to graduate by Hilton Princeton to talk to her. But Sabrina just laughs it off." The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of giving Sabrina everything she wanted, my parents had created someone who didn't know how to handle responsibility. A month later, Grandma called with an update. "Well, it finally happened," she said. "Sabrina got kicked out of graduate by Hilton Princeton. She failed almost all her classes and had too many disciplinary issues to count." I could hardly believe it. The golden child, the genius, the one who was supposed to bring glory to the family name, was kicked out of college after just 1 year. "She's moved back home," Grandma added. "Your parents are in shock. They keep saying there must be some mistake, that the university didn't understand Sabrina's special needs as a gifted student." Over the next few months, during my regular calls with my grandparents, I learned that Sabrina had settled into a routine of doing nothing. She slept until noon, went out with a different guy every night, and treated our parents' house like a hotel. "Your father tried to get her to at least look for a job," Grandpa told me one day. "She told him that work was beneath someone of her intelligence." I felt a mix of emotions, vindicated and pleased, but also relieved that I had escaped their suffocating expectations and found my own path. After I graduated, I landed a job as a junior investment analyst at Meridian Financial, one of the top firms in my hometown. Grandma and Grandpa insisted I stay with them until I got on my feet, and I gratefully accepted. The unexpected reunion with my parents happened one Monday morning at Marshall's grocery. I was comparing prices on organic tomatoes when I heard a familiar voice. "Maud, is that really you?" I turned to see my parents standing there. They looked older than I remembered. Mom was clutching her shopping cart like it was holding her up. "We've missed you so much," Dad said, his voice unusually soft. "Why don't you come over for dinner sometime?" Part of me wanted to say no, to remind them of how they had treated me years ago. But curiosity got the better of me.
"Sure," I said.
When I said yes to dinner, I didn't expect how strange it would feel. The house and dining room table were the same, but everything else felt different. My parents couldn't stop talking about my job. An investment analyst at such a prestigious firm, Mom kept saying. "We're so proud of you, honey. Bill Walton told me they only hire the best and brightest at Meridian." Sabrina sat quietly, gripping her fork so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had just quit her third retail job that year. Over the next few years, I worked my way up at Meridian. Each promotion brought new responsibilities, and I handled them all. My parents started inviting me to regular family dinners, and I went sometimes, keeping a polite but cautious distance. Sabrina, meanwhile, kept bouncing between jobs and long stretches of unemployment, never leaving our parents' house. She'd work as a waitress for a few months, then quit, claiming it was beneath her. She'd try being a receptionist, but leave because it was too boring. Everything shifted again during one family dinner. Sabrina burst through the front door with a tall, well-dressed man in his 40s trailing behind her. "Everyone, this is Olivier," she said triumphantly. "My boyfriend." Olivier was polite and well-spoken. It was clear he came from money. Sabrina spent the whole evening throwing smug looks my way. "See," she finally said during dinner, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "I bet you didn't expect me to find someone before you did, Miss Career Woman." I just shrugged and took another bite of Mom's pot roast. Sabrina's attempt to get under my skin felt childish, especially given how far I'd come. My parents, however, were completely charmed by Olivier. They hung on his every word about his family's real estate empire and his fancy education. When Olivier left, promising to take Sabrina to an expensive restaurant the following weekend, Mom pulled me aside. "Isn't it wonderful?" she whispered excitedly. Olivier comes from such a good family. They own half the commercial properties downtown. Sabrina's finally found her path to success. I didn't bother pointing out that dating a rich man wasn't exactly a career. Some things never change. The turning point in my career at Meridian came when I spotted a huge error in one of our major investment portfolios. The senior analysts had missed a pattern of high-risk investments that could have cost our clients millions. I stayed up 4 nights in a row analyzing data and preparing a detailed report. At an emergency meeting I called, our CEO, Mr. Felix, looked at me with genuine admiration. "Miss Adams, this is remarkable," he said. "How did you catch this?" "I noticed inconsistencies in the risk assessment models," I explained. I explained my findings to the team. "If we move these investments now, we can not only avoid losses but also increase returns by 9%. My strategy worked even better than I expected. Within 7 months, the restructured portfolio showed a 12% increase in returns. Clients were thrilled, and Meridian's reputation soared. Building on that success, I developed a new investment algorithm to spot opportunities in emerging markets before our competitors. Then came the day that changed everything. I was called into the boardroom, expecting a regular meeting. "Maud," Mr. Felix began, "we're creating a new position, investment director. We want you to fill it." I almost dropped my coffee cup. Investment director? That would mean I'd oversee all investment strategies for the firm. A huge promotion, skipping several career steps. The first people I called were Grandma and Grandpa. They were overjoyed and so proud of me. At our next family dinner, I shared the news with my parents. To my surprise, they were genuinely excited. "This calls for a celebration," Mom declared. "I was thinking of reserving a private room at La Foresteria," I said, mentioning an upscale downtown restaurant. "I could invite the whole family." "Oh, no, Mom interrupted, waving her hand. "You should have it here. Your father and I will help organize everything. It will be more personal, more special. I'll invite all the relatives and get catering from that wonderful place on Oak Street." Her excitement was contagious, and I agreed. Over the next week, I transferred money to her account for party expenses, and she kept me updated with phone calls. The evening started perfectly. I arrived at my parents' house in my favorite black cocktail dress, wearing a pearl necklace Grandma and Grandpa had given me for graduation. The house looked beautiful, fresh flowers everywhere, elegant table settings, and the smell of gourmet food filled the air. Family members were already mingling when I walked in. My grandparents hugged me warmly, Aunt Chelsea kissed my cheek, and Uncle Lucas patted my shoulder. Sabrina was in the living room, wearing a stunning blue designer dress, with Olivier by her side in a sharp suit. Once everyone had arrived, we gathered around the large dining table. I stood up with a champagne glass in hand, ready to make my announcement. "I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight," I began. "Oh, sweetie, let me..." Mom jumped in, cutting me off mid-sentence. Her voice was full of excitement, but not for the reason I expected. I muttered as Mom stood up, beaming at the family. "We've gathered here today," she announced proudly, "to celebrate a wonderful occasion. Our beautiful Sabrina and her amazing Olivier are engaged to be married." The room erupted with gasps and cheers. Sabrina pretended to blush while holding up a massive diamond ring I hadn't noticed before. Olivier stood beside her, smiling like the perfect fiancé. I sank back into my chair, my champagne glass nearly slipping from my numb fingers. This couldn't be real. The party I had paid for, my promotion celebration, had been taken over as Sabrina's engagement announcement. Looking around the table, I saw nothing but joy on everyone's faces. Even Grandma and Grandpa were smiling and congratulating the couple. That's when it hit me. No one knew this was supposed to be my celebration. My parents had invited them to an engagement party, not a promotion party. Anger boiled inside me. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. But before I could speak, I felt my father's hand grip my wrist. His smile stayed fixed for the guests, but his whispered words were icy. "Don't you dare make a scene," he hissed. "If you ruin this for your sister, we'll cut you off completely." No inheritance, no family, nothing. Sit down and smile. I yanked my hand free. No, I said, my voice sharp and clear, cutting through the chatter. Everyone needs to know the truth. The room fell silent. Sabrina's smug smile froze. This party, I continued, my voice steady now, was supposed to celebrate my promotion to investment director at Meridian Financial. I paid for everything, the food, the decorations, all of it. My parents took my money and turned it into an engagement party for Sabrina without telling me. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Aunt Chelsea's hand flew to her mouth. That's not true. Mom stammered, her face flushed. Maud, stop this nonsense right now. Show them the invitation, Aunt Chelsea, I said firmly. What does it say? Aunt Chelsea fumbled through her purse and pulled out the cream-colored card. She hesitated, then read aloud. It says, join us in celebrating the engagement of Sabrina Adams and Olivier Martinez. Olivier stood up, his face darkening. You told me this was a family dinner where you'd announce our engagement, he said, his voice cold. You never mentioned stealing your sister's celebration. Charlie, baby, let me explain. Sabrina pleaded, but he cut her off. No, he said firmly. I've seen enough. I won't be part of a family that treats people like this. This engagement is off.
He turned to me.
Maud, I'm sorry. I had no idea. Then he walked out. Sabrina's face twisted with rage. Look what you've done, she screamed at me. You've ruined everything. You're just jealous because I found someone, and you're still alone. Jealous? Sabrina sneered. I laughed, shaking my head. Jealous? I'm the investment director of a major financial firm. I don't need to steal someone else's party or marry a rich man to feel successful. That's enough. Dad shouted, standing up. You've gone too far, Maud. You're no longer part of this family. Consider yourself disinherited. Fine by me, I shot back, but before I could say more, Grandpa's voice cut through the tension. Actually, Mark, he said, rising to his feet with Grandma by his side, your inheritance won't matter much. Eleanor and I have already changed our will. Everything we have is going to Maud.
What?
Mom gasped, her face pale. She's the only one in this family with any integrity, Grandma said firmly. We've watched for years as you favored Sabrina and treated Maud unfairly. No more. The room erupted into chaos. Relatives began leaving in a hurry, clearly embarrassed. Sabrina ran upstairs in tears, and my parents stood frozen, unable to respond. I picked up my purse and walked to the door, my head held high. Goodbye, I said without looking back. Don't contact me again. That was 4 years ago. I haven't spoken to my parents or Sabrina since that night. From what I've heard through the grapevine, Sabrina still lives at home, bitter about losing Olivier and his money. My parents tried reaching out a couple of times, but I blocked their numbers. My grandparents, though, have remained my rock. We have dinner together every Thursday, and they're prouder of me than my parents ever were. Sometimes I think about that night and realize it was the best thing that could have happened. It freed me from seeking approval from people who were never going to give it. Last week, I was named the youngest CEO in Meridian Financial's history. When I told my grandparents, Grandma cried happy tears, and Grandpa opened a bottle of champagne he'd been saving for a special occasion. To authenticity, he toasted, and to finding your own path. I raised my glass and smiled. I was finally exactly where I was meant to be.